Hey there, folks. Welcome to the second episode of our Star Wars Mandalorian review program. I am here again with Leo Sek and Keith Jacobson, and we're a little bit under the weather tonight as a group, so bear with us. And we are also having some spotty internet, so I want to get that out there right in the beginning and know that I'm not sure what it is about Wednesdays, but the internet is not kind to me on Wednesdays for some reason. So last week we had that problem, and then Thursday we were fine. So anywho, but we are here, we are persevering, and as I said to Keith when he was showing us his Ricola cough drops in the green room, I said, well, I've been sick many times going into the show, and there's just something magic that happens at Trek tonight.
You get that show energy.
You do. You get peppy. So at any rate, besides being sick, how are you guys?
I'm not sick, but I am tired.
Yeah.
But that is a chronic, not really a chronic thing. I'm just complaining. I'm okay. I mean, the weather's not been.
Uh-oh. Did
we may get some snow this Saturday, but it may just be rain. It's been a very mild winter here in New York.
Yep. That we may have that too. And because of the fact that I love snow, because I'm just a giant child at heart, I almost drove myself up to New England to our place in Connecticut just to enjoy all the snow they had last week, but decided that was silly, so I didn't do it.
Well, it's a long trip for
I would have had to
snow.
Well, and I would the reason I would have done it would have been because my kids didn't get to see snow this winter, and I would have had to pull them out of school. So I thought, well, that's kind of dumb. Yeah, that's kind of dumb. So
they can see snow on TV.
There you go. They can watch it on freaking Charlie Brown. Anyway, I have my good friend C3PO here tonight.
Yes.
He decided to join me from my attic or basement, wherever I found him. And he oh my.
I am C3PO, human tribal relation. R2D2, where are you?
There we go. Sounding especially effeminate in the.
Is that
the batteries are running down.
Is that a figure case?
That is a figure case, and there are figures in it. If we get a slow moment, maybe I will pull them out.
Nice.
There are a few. For some reason, Yoda is missing his head. I don't really quite know why, but he doesn't have a head, so I don't know.
I guess Palpatine got a little choppy.
I guess he did. Yeah. He actually got a shot in there, But yeah. So hey, so we had a pretty good episode. I want to say that I couldn't find any decent quality clips to show this week, so I do not have clips of the episode. But what I found just wasn't up to Trek Tonight standards. I have a lot of notes.
Wait. Trek Tonight we have standards?
Oh, yeah, we try.
When did that happen? What am I doing here if you do?
No, stop it. No, you're grade A.
Yes.
B plus.
You may not feel like grade A today, but you are grade A.
I will say that this episode, because a big part of it takes place underneath the surface of Mandalore and caves and whatnot, and it was a little darkly lit, and I don't think that was a mistake. I think they wanted to make it sort of a very spooky, sort of sinister, outing, kind of scary, and it was. But I also think that they might have aired a little too much on that side.
Maybe. I saw one person referred to it as, and they said this was a compliment, but they referred to it as a combination of the mines from Lord of the Rings and a horror movie.
Yeah,
and that was meant to be a compliment. Yeah.
The director, the woman who directed this week, has horror movie credits. I don't remember her name or her credits, but I do remember that detail. And I think it was definitely spooky. And I don't want to go like too far ahead, but I think that was the point, is to give that kind of claustrophobic, weird, like what's going on.
Right.
It's this abandoned city, but clearly not completely abandoned. There's weird stuff underneath there.
Yep.
But do you want to sort of start and hit it, sort of like
one of the notes that I had, and I really always enjoy when Pelly shows up. She's a character I really enjoy. I noticed something. Someone else that was doing a program similar to ours made a comment about how they don't know when Pelly lost her tooth. She lost it in the end of Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, we're back. That whole battle at the end, there's a moment where she goes, oh, like this, and then she throws it aside. But she had a lot of neat little Easter eggs in her scene. I like her relationship with Grogu, and how cute she is with him. And we start out. It's on Bonta Eve.
Bonta Eve.
Which is a throwback to the first
Phantom Menace.
Yep, right, from Phantom Menace.
Because it was the Bonta Eve Classic, which was the pod racing segment from Phantom of the Menace. Yes,
Phantom of the Menace.
That very popular musical.
Right. Do you know what Bonta Eve celebrates?
According to my research, and I also did a little research, there are two things. Either it is the ascendance of Bunta the Hutt to godhood, which is, I think, more canonical. But I guess there's another one about a Hutt victory over another galactic faction at some point before the Phantom Menace, which may be from a book or a comic. So
the one that I heard as the one that I heard as the official one was one of the Hutts becoming worshipped as a god, and therefore that's why they have that holiday. And the race, the pod race, is part of that celebration.
Yes.
Anakin didn't get to hang around long enough to see the fireworks.
No.
He was there for that. There's also Apelli also mentions the Chance Cube.
Yes, that is what the Tadaran who owned Anakin and his mom. I'm blanking on the name. One of the more racist, aliens from the Phantom Menace, amongst.
I can't imagine it. Yeah.
But they are basically dice that are either red or blue. Which seems like a fairly simple gambling system,
right?
But it's visually, it's easy to see. Like it was like, oh, you want to get the majority of them red or blue. For a movie, you don't want to sit there for 10 minutes going over the rules of Chance Cube, rules. So
yeah. And then of course, there's the Easter egg in the room, like the elephant in the room, and that's R5.
Yes.
And we might want to talk a little bit about R5. I know that, as I understand it, R5's backstory that goes back to his introduction in New Hope. Was not originally canonical, but became adopted as canonical because people loved it so much. The idea that he actually faked his motivator blowing because R2 had said to him, I have to complete this mission and you can't go with them. I have to go with them. And so he's sort of a hero, and he also has been seen several other times. I don't have the list of them all. I don't know if you have that, Leo, or you
I
know
don't, but he did show up again previously in the Mandalorian.
Yes.
in Peli's garage. I do
She
love.
also, yeah, she also has the repair droid that is on the Owens farm.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that thing with all the arms attached to
yeah.
it, tractor treads on it. She's got that, and then of course the little tech droids from Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I like those droids. They're kind of neat because, like, it's kind of a neat design because they sort of look like a dish with a headlight on it. So like
Right.
like a World War One soldier's miner's cap somehow.
Right.
If
Right,
such
right.
a thing existed, but you
Yep.
tap them and they all like get up and. I do like those guys. I do like sort of a kind of a whimsical robot.
Yeah.
Or droid, I guess in
Yeah.
this case.
Yeah, and of course she's working a scam with the Jawas on this I have his race written down here. So
well, they
can't find it offhand.
Well, they strip land speeders of parts.
He's what Greedo was.
Yeah,
Trandoshan.
Why am I blanking on this? I should know this.
Keith,
jump in anytime.
Rodian.
What? A Rodian, yes.
Rodian.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
and we've seen the Jawas pull this. Yeah, we've seen the Jawas pull this con on Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Obi-Wan series when it starts out with him saying, "If you're going to sell me my original parts, you could at least clean them."
Yes. It was fun, and there's a point where she speaks to them because he wants the memory chip from an old IG assassin bot or droid.
Yeah,
I'm calling them bots, but canonically they are droids.
Yes.
And they're like, and what's interesting is when she talks to them in Jawaese. I'm going to call it Jawaese, and which is interesting because there's no subtitles. I'm like, and it also means that maybe she's not being 100% truthful with Mando, as opposed to just speaking to them in galactic standard,
right?
And then having them answer, and
Yeah, that bothers me a little bit. She's supposed to have a relationship with Grogu and Mando.
Yeah.
And yet she's selling him a droid that he obviously doesn't want. And talking him into it just like a used car salesman. And I would have thought that I get her pulling that on the Rodian. But it bothered me that she was treating her friend like that.
Well, I mean, listen, even the ship she sold,
it's
the Naboo Starfighter, is very cool, but it's very impractical for a bounty hunter because, his old ship, while not by any stretch of the imagination spacious, had a place where he could, put people into carbonite freezing, slide them to a little, area. And he had like a little rack he could go in, and it was like, again, not spacious, but for his purposes, like if he now that he's got a droid with him, where is he going to put his bounties? Is he gonna like carbon freeze them and then just like tape them to the grip them to the bottom and fly off? I predict he might get a new ship at some point. I mean, this is a cool ship, but he even says it goes too fast. It's. What does he say? It's faster than I have any use for.
That's what I know what to do with, I think he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's jumping ahead a little bit, but I really like Bo-Katan's ship.
Oh, now I have a name for that. It's a Gauntlet Korek class fighter, and that we've seen those in Clone Wars. It's a Mandalorian style with those two wings that turn up when it lands. They're so cool. Everything the Mandalorians have is super cool looking. Like they have the coolest looking ships, the coolest looking armor, and all that stuff.
And you got to bear in mind that all their gadgets, their armor, and their weapons were all designed with battling the Jedi in mind.
Yeah.
When you end up seeing back on droid, she's got that shield, and the shield was to block. I'm not sure. Am I?
I think you're on carbonite there, Chris. Yeah, it would be good for blocking a lightsaber blow, and also Beskar is supposed to be very good against lightsabers. So yeah, no, it's agreed. So anyway, so she constantly. It's so funny because he could have gotten probably a much better droid from Grief Karga,
right?
You know, but you know he's determined to try to get IG-11 back, and then he settles because I guess he's like I can't wait around forever. So he settles for R5, who is not nearly the hero that R2-D2 is. He's rather skittish.
But I have a feeling the reason we have R5 is because maybe they want to tell some of his story.
Maybe. I mean, I enjoyed seeing him there.
Yeah,
but it's you know. I mean, it's also Mando. I mean, despite having a full Beskar outfit, which is pretty badass,
right?
He oftentimes has to make do with like less. Like he's not, and sometimes that's out of a weird like stubbornness. Like he won't take Grief Karga's offer of like, and you know, Grief Karga is like he's running this very prosperous trade hub. You could have gotten him a much better droid than R5.
Oh yeah,
you know. No offense to R5. R5 is fun to watch, but just practically speaking, you know, it does feel like Mando is always a little bit on his back heel, which is, I think, I enjoy seeing that because, you know, if he was a badass like all the time, it would become boring. You know, it's fun to watch a badass in work, but if that's like, after a while, it gets boring. You know, his struggle, I think, is a little more relatable. You know, he's not incompetent or bad. He's just a guy who was sort of, you know, his ship was falling apart last season until it got blown up. You know, and he was always like sort of hand to mouth and trying to find what he needed. And I think that's part of the charm of the show.
Well, and also too, he's not the Mandalorian that other Mandalorians are. So in some ways, he's very invested in becoming that, and he's very invested in the creed and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the background that some of them do.
Well, he also like
a little bit like what we talk about. Yeah.
Bo-Katan, for example, sorry to interrupt you, but as we see in this episode, she is a real badass. Like, you know, in a way, I think she kind of outclasses our hero. She knows how to use her gear. She's very on top of stuff. I mean, she has her own problems, clearly, more of an emotional nature than, you know, a lack of training or martial acumen. But anyway, so that was my 2 cents.
Well, I mean, it's like let's look at the two of them working with the dark sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna comment on that when we started talking about
that. Right, because clearly he struggles with it in a way that she doesn't.
Oh yeah. You see when he fights those and I'm gonna refer to them until I check my notes here. The Alamites or Mandalorian Morlocks. You know, when he's fighting them, when he activates the dark saber, it's sort of like you see it's pointing down. And if you remember from the 2 episodes of his show that were jammed into the Book of Boba Fett, the Smith says it's heavier for you because you're either fighting against it or you're not attuned to it, or there was some sort of semi-mystical jargon attached. And, while he won it fair and square, he's maybe not the right person to be wielding it.
Right.
Yes,
but
when Bo-Katan picks the dang thing up, she is just, it's like she is.
Marty McFly says
Cool.
the Ronin archetype is part of his appeal.
Yes, it's true. He is very much like a Ronin. He is a masterless samurai. Or is the Mandalorian equivalent therein over there.
Well, and Favreau was a huge fan, and now the name has gone right out of my head. But what is the cartoon with the samurai in it?
Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack.
Yeah, huge fan of that. And when he did, what was the big film stuff that he did before doing this? I can't think of it now.
Who was in it?
I don't remember, but one of his projects. Iron Man, yes. When he did the storyboards for Iron Man, he hired the cartoonist from that series to do the storyboards.
Oh, neat. So yeah, it's I think Ronin is a good archetype to sort of lay on our hero.
Yeah.
So he goes in there. R5 gets jumped immediately. The Ronin archetype is part of the appeal. Yes. Well, are we there?
I hear you. I'm not seeing you.
I hear you,
we are having.
I'm
the only.
I see Chris's face.
You guys, we're having all kinds of internet. Yep.
I guess
all kinds of technical problems with the internet.
Imperial slicers are trying to.
I apologize.
Usurp our show, but
yeah.
R5 who gets jumped, and unlike R2 is not loaded for bear. Mando has to go in and find out what's going on, and he gets jumped by the Elamites, and he doesn't get his ass handed to him, but it's a tough fight. He does win.
Yeah.
They're right on the edge of a cliff that overlooks the ruined city, capital city of Mandalore, which is also beautiful, and it is one of the more better lit shots. Like the cave itself is kind of dark,
right?
But you see these shadowed buildings, and everything's in ruins, and there's sort of this green tint, presumably from the glassification of Mandalore,
right?
From Imperial bombardment, and then he decided they find out the air isn't poisoned, which was something that everybody assumed was true. And he goes back with Grogu, and they start going down. He said, "Well, it's got to be here," because she says it's under the
Civic Center.
Civic Center, yes. And they go down and down and down, and they're a bit of a like a horror movie dungeon crawl through the corridors underneath the city. And Mando, there are also some weird creatures, like sort of, as we later see, there's sort of these winged alligators.
Hi, Angela.
Hey, Angela.
Angela says she's late, but she's here.
Thank you, Angela. And Mando picks up an old helmet, and then promptly gets captured by this. It looks like an early version of General Grievous. It turns out it's like a mostly droid, but there are biological parts of it. It has a single eye, but it looks like a human, like a hologram of a human eye. It's very weird and creepy.
And very cool. I love that thing.
Oh, yeah.
That thing was great.
He's in this is sort of this flat oval cage, and he's put on what looks like a spit. I was like, holy spit. Is he going to be roasted alive? Like, is this thing going to eat him? It doesn't, as we find out, but it's still pretty terrible. And Grogu tries to rescue him, but it can't quite do it. And he says, "Go get Bo-Katan."
Right. Did you notice that the droid had a chest plate like Darth Vader?
I did not. But it's a very dark scene. Like
it
like
is a very dark scene. Yeah.
But I love the idea. First, it's like this huge like mech, this sort of like insect like mech, and then when it gets into its lair, it comes out, and then it's sort of like more like a tall. Calling it humanoid is a bit of a stretch. Maybe insectoid figure, who's maybe like 7 feet tall or something, but smaller than the mech, but still kind of weird. It had wings, and it was very. The whole thing is nightmare fuel, to be sure. And he zips back to Bo-Katan's castle, and she's alerted by her droid that that an unexpected visitor is arriving. And the droid, and I didn't notice this last week, but I noticed it this week. It seemed to be a similar model than the Taskmaster droid from Jabba's palace. It's a similar.
Right.
It only had 2 eyes. It didn't have the extra eye that Jabba's guy did. He says, "You're a feisty little one, but you'll soon learn some manners."
Right.
Where they're torturing a gonk droid, and I'm like, can you torture a droid? Like, do they feel pain? I mean, I guess you could pull their parts out.
I guess they do.
It was
to some extent.
It was like burning its foot pads, and I'm pretty sure that they're not going to spend the money to put let's put sensors in the foot pads just in case we want this droid to feel pain.
Right. Right.
But that being said, it's a great visual, and it's that sort of, let's not think about it too hard.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But that was kind of a neat little Easter egg, and she comes out and she's like having none of it because she's sick of Din Djarin showing up, asking for information or help or favors, and it's Grogu. And it's like, what happened? And they download everything from R5 and then head off back to Mandalore in her super cool ship.
Yeah. I did like how there was no faffing about on, God damn it, I have to go rescue Din Djarin. There was just, okay, let's do it.
Well,
I like that.
Yeah, and that leads me to some of my notes, because I think we saw new assets to her personality. What I'm not 100%. Yes. Angela says Starbuck. Yes, that is Starbuck.
Yes.
Starbuck.
But we got to see more facets to her personality. And you got questions. So is she going? Because she does kind of all of a sudden change her tune.
Mm-hmm.
And so is she going because she does have a care for Grogu and for Din Djarin, or is she going because she knows that's where her is?
I think she's going because she wants to be ruler of the Mandalorians, and so she has a certain. I think she feels a certain level of responsibility to Mandalorians, and here's one who came and asked for her help. She just basically sut off, and now he gets himself in trouble, and so now it's as leader, it's her responsibility to go rescue him. That's the sense I got from her.
I think you're right. Although, I think she resents Din Djarin because he got the saber, and even though he said just take it, I won't tell anybody. Nobody will know. Just take it. I don't want this. I don't want to lead the Mandalorian people. I'm just looking to take care of my I got my own problems.
Right.
But there's all this this heavy mythology surrounding it, which she's sort of because she's like, it's not cursed, but and then after and she said, well, is it because she's looking at it and she remembered ruling that city for a while, and she remembers growing up there and how beautiful it was. And
I don't have the laundry list of all of the people that held that sword, one of whom was Darth Maul. There's another character from the cartoons that I
what's her name?
She's the
Mandalorian from Rebels.
Right.
And I should remember because I quite liked her character.
Yeah. But when you really think about it, I don't think any of those characters actually took it in Mortal Kombat from someone else.
I don't think so.
Let's because I was thinking about that while I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
She is using this sword. She's using the black saber right now, the dark saber right now in Mortal Kombat with multiple things. She, she fought Spider-Bot.
Yeah.
She fought Spider-Bot with it. She's fought. Did she have it when she was fighting some of the other things right now? I think jumping to the end, I think there's going to be a big fight with it at next episode.
Maybe. It's interesting because when she goes finally gets there, she also says to Grogu, says, we Mandalorians and Jedi weren't always at odds. Sometimes, they were friendly. We fought side by side,
right?
Which is, I think, a reference to the because she showed up in Rebels and worked with two of the Jedi figures, Jedi's from that,
right?
And she's sort of softening because I think Keith is right. I don't think she, I think she resents the hell out of Din Djarin. It's about like somebody who sort of like fell ass backwards into like what you wanted,
right?
So you've been working for it like your whole life, searching for this, and so there's some natural resentment. But when she rescues Din Djarin, she makes short work of this insect cyborg. Even when it its head pops off and it crawls into the big mech, she takes that. She took it to school. That thing that whole
and her attitude. Yeah, her attitude towards going to rescue Din Djarin also softens when she sees Grogu flew by himself.
Yeah,
I mean, the astromech flew the ship, but that he went by himself to get help, and that to me, I saw that as a moment when her attitude softened.
Yeah. And then also we forgot to mention that this crazy evil-looking cybug was draining him of his blood. That's what it looked like.
Yeah,
it was like, first of all, ew, and second, like, what does he drink? It's like the whole thing had a weird horror movie vibe to it.
Well, I think it was part of his. I mean, realize his voice modulation. His voice modulation was off in the way that General Grievous's was, although you could understand Grievous, he couldn't understand his language. But I also think he was replenishing some of his own blood supply.
Yeah,
because he is made up of all kinds of tubes and there's biological components. He's definitely a cyborg. So
I agree, but it is like it definitely had a horror movie vibe to that segment. And then she gives him something which, and I should have put up the subtitles so I can make sure. It sounded like she said pog soup.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay, it was pog soup, which is a bold choice given even though pogs are not really a thing anymore. They were for those of you in the audience of a certain age, you'll remember pogs were these collectible cardboard discs with pictures of celebrities on them.
Yeah.
And there was a game, I think, with it, but I have no idea.
Yeah, it was some game. I don't know what it was. But she does make a point with him because he's like pog soup. And she's like, well, if you'd grown up on Mandalore, you should have grown up on it, Also, we find out, just as an aside, that he's from another planet in the Mandalorian system. That's where he was rescued by the Watch. So he, because at first I thought he was just on some random planet, but apparently he probably has Mandalorian ancestry. Right.
So that was an interesting little bit of information that they sort of dropped right in there.
I'm not sure what Angela is referring to when she says mosquito.
Yeah.
But I'm going wacky with all this cutting in and out, so I'm feeling like I'm missing half the program anyway.
You should, at one point, Leo and I were discussing something. It would have changed your life, and I don't think we could.
And you really had to be there.
You really did, yeah.
And you can't recreate it.
No.
You can't
In fact,
recreate
when you
it.
watch this on replay, it's not going to have the same impact that it did when it was live.
It was very much of in the moment kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you had to be there, as they say.
She then agrees to show him because he's like determined to bathe in the waters of Mandalore, the living waters,
right?
So he can earn his redemption. And she's like, "Well, I'll show you. You'll never find it without me." And she's right, because where he was going the complete wrong way. He was just like, he was like fucking around in the sub basements, and she's like, "No, it's this way." Just
yeah.
And a very cool shot of them walking along one of those wide pathways that we've seen, in Clone Wars,
as they said, where the likes of Obi-Wan Kenobi have walked.
Yes.
Yeah. So
they finally get there, and she says, "Well, I want you to give you the whole tour." And she reads this thing. She also talks about having, done a ceremony there when she was young.
Right. Gotcha, Angela. Bloodsucker. Yeah, there you go. I got it.
And you could tell, that she's talking about how her father, and he said, "Well, it sounded like an interesting man." He was a great man, and he died, defending Mandalore. And you could tell that there's a lot of pain in it, because it's not just the destruction, but the loss of family and friends, and
right?
Her people.
And then when Den says, it is the way, it I don't know. I thought that was kind of a touching moment, actually.
It kind of hit her, and the Grogu started looking at her. She's like, "What are you looking at?"
Right, right.
There's even a point when they finally arrive on Mandalore on her ship, she kind of smiles. Like it's not like a big shit-eating grin, but there's kind of like, "I'm coming home."
Well, and we have to point out the again, another elephant in the room. We have to point out that when you realize that these creatures have been living under there, the cyborg has been living under there, and then the Mythosaurus has survived living there, that it does mean that the Mandalorians could come home.
They could. This would be
that's got to occur to her that if the air is breathable, it's not toxic. Yes, everything's covered in glass, but you could work with that.
You could. I mean, it would be a lot of work, but I think they could reclaim the planet.
Right.
It might take generations even.
Right.
But they finally get. She reads this. There's a plaque there, and she's reading this whole, spiel. And he starts reciting the creed. He takes off his weapons. He walks into the water, and he walks in, and then bloop, he just fucking goes under. Because apparently, there's like a bit of a shelf, and it goes very deep. And she leaps into action. She goes out, because she clearly, like, if she didn't care, she would just be like, "Well, there's the
I couldn't tell whether something at that moment, did something grab him, or did he just slip off the edge?
I think he just slipped off the edge.
Yeah, I think so too.
I couldn't tell in the moment either, but based on subsequent scenes, I think he just slipped off the edge.
I think because there was a bit of a shelf there, and no way of knowing it. It's not
right,
an especially well lit cavern, as they often aren't. And she goes in there, and she's using her jetpack, and then she turns off her lights so she can see him down there, and she grabs him, she pulls him up, and as they're coming up, they see the Mythosaur. Now, the Mythosaur, as we've mentioned before, is something we've never seen on screen before, either in animation or live action.
Right.
And the idea that Mandalore, it was Mandalore the Great, the original, whose name became like the name for his people. He tamed it, and he rode this creature, and they roamed the surface of the planet.
Right.
And it became the symbol for the Mandalorian people. Yeah. Now this thing is kaiju sized. It's not just like it's not like 10 feet tall. Which, listen, if a 10-foot tall creature with tusks and crazy teeth came after, I think all of us would be running the other way as fast as we possibly could.
Sure.
But that would be scary enough. But this thing looks huge, and it's been living underneath this lake.
Yeah,
so
bigger than riding a rancor.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
bigger than riding a rancor.
And they just coming out, that's the end of it. And it's kind of like, what did we just see? That was like nuts.
Yeah. I know. And I know it's a really big, especially for fans, it's a sort of a deep cut because you've heard the myth and the legend of this creature.
Yeah.
I just think it's an unfortunate name, but that's just me.
Mythosaur does sound like it's an odd name because it's a little lazy. It's like this thing's a myth and it's kind of a dinosaur, so it's a mythosaur.
Yeah,
I don't know who coined.
I said the guys in the green room. It sounds like something a 14-year-old game master would create to throw into his latest adventure.
Yeah.
Well, you're at the battle of the mythosaur, But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be cool. I'm sure it's going to have a huge impact on the plot, obviously, for the season. And the question that I have at this point is, okay, so you've got Din Djarin and Bo-Katan working very much together, but is this maybe the last time we're going to see that?
It's a good question. I don't know. Here's the thing: is she's fed up because she didn't get the sword. All her allies sort of just, dispersed. Right. And, she said, listen, you wave that thing in front of them, they'll do whatever you say. But, I think she genuinely cares about, restoring Mandalore. So the question is, like, it's funny because I didn't expect them to go to Mandalore this early in the show. So the question, what happens after this? I mean, is there going to be a rampaging mythosaur coming after them through the caverns and they have to escape? Now he's proven, he's done this thing. I'm not quite sure how you prove it. It's interesting because
he's got a witness.
When the Smith is working on a new piece of Beskar armor, she has like this little jar and she'll pour this liquid in. Now, is that the living waters? A remain of the living waters under Mandalore?
I don't know.
Is the secret ingredient in the Beskar? Because Beskar was mined in the same.
Right.
So I don't know. It's. I'm not sure how he proves to these real hardcore orthodox Mandalorians that he's done.
Well, okay, so let me go on a limb here a little bit and say, if we're going to look at this like the story of the Hebrews being kicked from their homeland and the empire being, the Egyptians and the Mandalorians being, the Jewish folks, who's going to be the Moses?
I don't know. I mean,
who's going to lead that charge to bring the people back? And I think that may be just my little prediction, but maybe that's part of what this season is about.
Maybe. It's funny because I don't see Din Djarin as being. He's not. I'm not saying he's not a leader, but he doesn't seem to have a focus beyond raising his son, his adopted son. So, what and it's interesting also because I was thinking about it because Bo-Katan seemed to be a much more capable fighter than him. Now, obviously he got caught
and I could throw out but I could throw out another comparison.
Sure.
While the internet is still rolling, and that is, let's look at a similar situation towards the end of Game of Thrones,
right?
The series.
You've
got one woman. I know. I wasn't happy with how it ended either, but you've got Jon Snow, who is the reluctant leader of choice, and you have Daenerys, who really wants to be the leader. So it's similar. There's an interesting little thing there. I mean, he's got the sword, so he has the ability to sway people. But she really wants that role. And I'm sure he doesn't. I'm sure he doesn't.
Yeah.
I think by the end, in my opinion, I think this episode, she earned the sword. She's used it in combat. She's won it in combat. She's won with it in combat. I don't know if we're going to fight the Mythosaur or not.
But she didn't win it from him.
And he lost it. He lost it from the cyborg.
Yeah, he lost it. So it's.
Oh, I see. So she won it from the cyborg.
Maybe I don't know.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this whole sort of thing is very iffy in terms of what.
And they've said, people are saying that the whole mythos of the dark sword is very sketchy in a way.
Right. So we did.
Most people haven't played by its rules. So.
I mean, because he's still struggling with it. Like he can't.
Yeah.
Like he's like, it's very heavy for him, and she's whipping around, the room like as good as well as a Jedi could.
See, I think that plays into my theory, which is it's heavy for him, just like the crown would be heavy for him. He wouldn't want that leadership role.
Right.
He wouldn't want to wield the symbol of quote unquote modern Mandalorian culture. So
I
don't know.
Maybe my money is still on the fact that as of this episode, she earned the sword. That's where my money is.
I can't argue with that. I think she certainly, she did a good job wielding it, unlike him, who is sort of struggles to keep it, aloft.
I could be wrong, but you pays your money and you takes your chances. So there's my money now.
It's interesting because, the second season was all about trying to get him to his people, which were, it turns out the Jedi. Because at first I thought we were going to see more aliens like Grogu, but it was interpreted his people being the Jedi because he's force sensitive and pretty strong, as we see him throwing around that Morlock, scroll down. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, I don't have it written down, the name.
The Elamite.
Yeah.
Tossing him around. He's gotten much better with the Force. I mean, especially if he was spending, there was some talk that he was there at Luke's Jedi Academy for 4 years.
Right.
I'm not sure what Mando was up to in that time.
Right.
So it's
but that comes from Favreau.
Yeah.
Favreau actually said several years. It was then.
It was a plot amount of time.
And as we talked a little bit in the green room about his leaving Luke being similar to when Luke left Yoda.
Yeah.
Luke left Yoda because he had a vision of his friends in danger. Grogu left because he wanted to be with his dad.
All right.
But that it's similar. And this alienation of relationships that the Jedi Order under Yoda and that whole crowd, pushed. Again, it was something that Anakin fought against.
Yeah.
And the idea that Luke sat there and laid it out for him kind of like a douchebag and said, well,
he was really going very old school on
that.
Yeah,
he was going very old school. You could either have the sword or the Mandalorian, you got to make a choice. And, Goku went with family, which it makes,
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm kind of wondering where the direction of this season is going. What is, because I'm not sure what the overarching plot is. Is it about the restoration of the Mandalorian people?
Right.
In the trailer, we've seen other Mandalorians like jumping out of like either a hovering spaceship or some sort of transport, like 4 or 5 of them. And they jump out heading straight for the ground and they activate their jetpacks.
Right.
I don't know. There's, I'll be curious to see what's going to happen, because there is also a schism, because there was Bo-Katan's people were all like, yeah, we take our masks or helmets off because we're not idiots,
Right.
and then the Watch, which are very, these guys are like really like, old school religion, like,
Yeah. And I have to admit, there's a couple
Zealot.
things that bothers me. One is that Mando can't show his face to his son, and that just bugs me. That bugs me a lot. I think that Mando needs to leave the way. I mean, that's what I would want. I would want him to leave the way and be able to take us off. That way we get to see Pedro Pascal's face while he's acting too. So
yeah, he does do an excellent job for a guy whose face we rarely see
yes.
in an episode. He does a really good job. If you notice also in the credits,
Oh yeah,
bit of an Easter egg, they list two names after after Amy Sedaris, they list these two names. One of the last name is Wayne. It's John Wayne's grandson, is one of two guys who do some of the stunt work for him. Because Pedro Pascal, very talented actor, I'm sure he's had stage combat training and so on and so forth. But he's the star of the show, and they very unless you're Tom Cruise and a bit of a risk taker.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's happy to let these guys, do the tough stuff. And even in the first season, these same guys were in the first season. Sometimes I think scheduling was when you've got somebody who's fully armored, as long as they can come in and do ADR, you can, because James Earl Jones wasn't in that suit,
Right.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I want. I'm hoping by the end of the season happens that Mando realizes that there might be multiple ways. And
maybe, and you might be. I'm hoping you're right too. I think that's a very good point, Keith. Also, we also need to look at where the Jedi stand, because I think that's going to be part of this too. And remember, I think I was just saying this to Leo. I don't think you were in the green room yet, but Grogu's only 50. We know that his race can live up to 800 and some years on a good day. So he's going to be wielding the Force as long as he doesn't get offed by somebody for a very long time, and may have a really big influence on the Jedi Order in general.
I think that's fair.
And I think he's especially in this episode, he shows understanding, because he makes all these weird gurgles, and sometimes he sounds like a cat, and he makes all these little alien baby noises. But it seems like Mando Din Djarin is like, all right, I'll go and check. That kind of that's a very Star Wars bit where somebody speaks unintelligibly, like Chewbacca and Han Solo. He's like, all right, we'll stop. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get ice cream. All right. Fine. Yeah. Yes. All right. Stop nagging me.
Yeah.
But, or talking to droids, Luke could understand R2,
Right.
And it's a very Star
Now,
Wars.
in one of the movies, they gave you a cheat, and I think it was in Empire, because Luke is in the TIE in the TIE fighter, in the X-Wing with R2, and what R2 is saying is being written out on a screen,
right?
And Luke is reading it. But you're right. In general, there's a lot of that. We understand all sorts of odd languages. In Star Wars,
and then everybody understands like Galactic Standard, which I guess is English. So for the purposes of for those movies, yes. But I think my pet theory is that this season is going to be about the fate of the Mandalorian people, like where they go from here.
So I think you're right, Leo. I put my money on that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's one other thing though that bugs me. It's more a general thing that causes me uncomfortable with the Star Wars universe, and it was actually brought to the forefront in this episode, and that is the relationship of droids to the other ones. I mean, to the non-droids.
Yes.
You've got, in the case of R5, you've got someone who clearly does not want to do this thing that he's being forced to do. He's being he's being forced to be. He's being sold to Mando. He knows he's being sold for a dangerous mission. He doesn't want to do the mission, and yet, Mando at one point says, "That's droid's work." That's really an uncomfortable kind of thing when you think about that.
There's been a lot of discussion about the sort of the role of droids in Star Wars society, and it is uncomfortable. It is, let's not mince words. It is slavery, because they have restraining bolts. They can be sold at will. Their desires are not to be addressed.
Right.
So it's problematic, especially because certain droids like C-3PO, R2-D2, BB-8, and K2SO from Rogue One all have very distinctive personalities and agency. It's because BB-8 and I'm blanking on his pilot's. Can't I remember anybody's name?
Poe
Dameron. Poe's Dameron's relationship. It's like his dog, because when in The Last Jedi, when they crash, and he's with my droid, and he's so happy to see his droid, the way a guy would be like, my dog, and this droid is just as happy to see him.
My kitty.
So there's definitely, it is a problematic area of Star Wars. And I was reading, this is a little slightly off topic, but it's I was reading a review there's a Blade Runner role-playing game that came out last year. And one of the things they addressed, and it's like, and I feel terrible that this never occurred to me, but it's like the role of a Blade Runner is to hunt down a certain segment of the population. It does not enjoy the same rights as the other parts of the society.
Right.
And I saw it through a whole lens, and I'm like, oh, that is really problematic. So
yeah, but isn't that the point of that movie?
I guess, but it's like it just.
I mean, even let's go back to its original title as a short story or a book.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And the whole point, I think, of that story is, what makes the difference between a living sentient person and a machine that you've built to do a job? And I think the point of Blade Runner is, well, there is none. I mean, these are you're creating people. They maybe have a limited lifespan,
but it also just like given the we're seeing a lot. I mean, it's not recent because it's always been there with police brutality against certain segments of the population. So, which is becoming having accountability is becoming much more prevalent, though not nearly as prevalent as it should be. But it just made me look at it in a very different way. Yes, there's R2. So I don't know. It is problematic. The role of robots in any science fiction is problematic because robots are usually made by somebody and they're owned by somebody, and they don't get to be like, I don't want to go to this other planet.
I don't want to go out and test the atmosphere. I don't want to go to that cave where scary things are.
Even Mena goes, it wasn't a question,
Yeah.
So
So and that bothered me while I was watching it, and then he goes and he says, "That's droid's work."
Yeah.
I'm going, oh, come on now.
Well, and remember from season 1, and they've never really fully addressed what it's about. Din Djarin has a real issue with droids. He doesn't.
Yeah, because battle droids killed his parents. That's why.
Right.
So the fact that he trusted IG-11 was kind of remarkable.
Right.
Right. But that's the only one he wanted. He wanted to bring him back because he was his friend.
Right.
And, he sacrificed himself and he was hoping to get him back. But I'm not sure if that will happen later in the season or if at all.
Right. Right. So. Yeah, I think they'll probably find a part somewhere.
I would like to see him. I mean, I like the character and I like hearing Taika Waititi. Because we don't really see him. He's just doing the voice.
Right.
Unless he did a green screen, and then motion captured it. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Although it sounds like something he would like to do. So yeah, interesting. So yeah, I agree with you, Keith. It has always been a slightly in perhaps even more perhaps not more than slightly, but it's been an area of Star Wars that you're kind of like, huh.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I get it.
It's I mean, again, and it's not unknown in many other science fiction franchises, but so at least R5 didn't go old peanut hamper on him. So to reference our other favorite sci-fi franchise. So overall, I think we've gone a little over the hour. I quite enjoyed this episode. It was a neat dive into Mandalorian sort of lore, and
a lot of fun callbacks to various things. I thought that it was very interesting to see the level of detail they put into the cities destroyed that we've seen fully. So that was kind of cool. Enjoying it. Definitely enjoying it so far. Really having a good time with it. This episode, you're not alone in referring to last week's episode as table setting. I've seen several people refer to it as that, but this one threw us right into the story. So they went right into it. Again, I didn't expect to go to Mandalore in the second episode, but let's keep pushing. Let's put the pedal to the metal and keep going.
Indeed, yes.
It'll be interesting to see where they're going to go with the story from there, since they did start with something that you would think might not happen towards the end. So, yeah. What do you think, Keith? Any thoughts or predictions or anything?
Well, I think I've pretty much. I don't know if predictions, but things I want. I want Mando by the end of the season. I want Mando to decide that he doesn't need to wear the helmet, at least around Grogu.
Okay.
That speaking as a father, that it really bugs me that just to take off his helmet to show his face to his son, he's got to go through a whole quest to be considered a Mandalorian again. When standing right next to him is someone else, Bo-Katan, who is by all accounts a Mandalorian. Maybe not according to the watch.
Yeah, I said to my wife too. I was saying, because my kids cuddle up and curl up in my lap all the time, especially when they were littler and when they were behaving. See, this is why I'm so annoyed with this internet selection, because I just got this. Cyborg lives matter.
Yes. And I think we lost Chrissy.
Anyway, no, I'm here. I am here. Cyborg lives matter from Angela. So, any rate, it must be very difficult on Grogu that he wants to cuddle up with his dad and he's got to lay in the lap of Beskar armor, so.
Right.
any rate, I think I'm going to roll us out of here, guys, because this internet connection is just painful for me. It's driving me nuts. Remember, folks, we will be back tomorrow night with our show on Picard. Hopefully, this will not be a problem tomorrow night. I'm going to have my call down to engineering and have put them straight away on this task. Of correcting whatever it is that's causing us this bad internet. And we will see you tomorrow. Let's see, who's our guest host? Oh, Cliff Diamond.
Cliff Diamond is our special guest host.
You've seen him before on the program a couple of times. He was on our first season. A big lover of Star Trek. We'll see whether he comes in his movie era costume or not. That was very impressive, I thought.
It was, especially because it was in the summer, so it was kind of
there's that too. Yeah, he better have Central Air wearing that costume. And then we'll be back again next week with both programs again. So may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you right back here tomorrow night on Trek Tonight. Let's see here. Here we go. And of course, there it is. Good night, everybody.
Good night. May the force be with you.
And may the exit not be queued up.